Hello. Today is the next in my series of writing your own expert advisor. And today I'm doing something a little different. The previous versions of this all relied on some kind of technical indicator for trade entry. Today I'm writing a range breakout expert advisor. Now you may have seen these described in various ways. At one stage there was a very popular London breakout strategy. You may have seen the same thing called a breakfast breakout strategy, and in various other names. The concept is basically that certain symbols will go quiet at certain times of the day, and then when those symbols become active, as in when the markets for those particular symbols begin to trade, the price will generally break out in one direction and move far enough to make a profit. But what I'm going to write today is an expert advisor that lets you set the start and end times for that time range when you'll expect the market to consolidate. It will trade a one-to-one take profit stop loss for the range breakout, and there will also be a close time where when you reach that time of day, all trades, whether they're still pending orders or existing trades, whether they're in profit or in loss, will just be closed out, ready to begin trading for the next day. So this is kind of a generic, does everything, range breakout type expert advisor. Now, as this is part of my series on writing your own expert advisor, I've actually taken one of the existing versions of this. I've taken the moving average cross with trailing stop, which was some 2 videos back in the series, and I'll leave a link in the description to both the playlist for the entire series and to this particular video that shows how I wrote the MA cross with trailing stop. I've chosen this as a starting point because it has a lot of the things I need. I will have to remove a certain amount of code because, as I said, there are no technical indicators in the range breakout, but it is a good starting point. This video will cover both MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5 because most of the changes are common to both, and there are just a few specific pieces for MetaTrader 4 or 5. And so to get started, I have the MetaTrader 5 editor open, but I've opened up the MQ4 for the MetaTrader 4 file and the MQ5 file and the MQH. Now, I've described previously how I use the MQH file. It contains all of the code that is the same for the MetaTrader 4 and the MetaTrader 5 versions. And that way, if I change that code, I only need to change it in one place and it builds into both the MetaTrader 4 and 5. I've also said that I will at some point release a video where I'll show how I do this, how I set up my system so that I have the same file that can be used for MetaTrader 4 or 5. In fact, I think that is going to be the next video that is released, and I'll just walk you through the whole setup that I use. But for today, know that I have the MQ4 version, the MQ5 version, and the MQH file, which is all of the common code. I've started by taking the existing MA cross with trailing stop code, and I've simply copied that. And all I've done so far is change the name in this comment and in this include file and the file names. So other than changing the names to time range breakout, this is exactly the same code that I had for the moving average cross with trailing stop. And as this video is for both MetaTrader 4 and 5, I will be moving between the MQ4, the MQ5, and the MQH files periodically. But I'll try to do this in a manner that makes some sense. I'm going to start with the MQH file so that I can make the common changes first. Now, in the inputs, I no longer have technical indicators, so I can simply remove from the earlier version the fast moving average and the slow moving average. I don't need inputs for those. I do still need an order size, but the take profit and stop loss are going to be based on the size of the range, so I don't need inputs for those. And I also don't need an input for the trailing stop because I won't have a trailing stop in this expert advisor. I'll just change the name there for the trade comment. Time range breakout. And this magic number that I use, I just set up a dummy number that I use for all of my expert advisors. But I recommend, as you're writing your own expert advisors, you choose a different magic number for each expert. So now I've removed all of the inputs for the technical indicators, but I do need inputs for the range. So I need a start time and an end time for the range, and then I need a close time. And for this, I'm going to take the technique of having separate inputs for the hour and the minute. So just for the start of the range, I have an input int INP range start hours, and I'm defaulting that to 0, and range start minutes also defaulting to 0. So these will represent the time when the range begins. And naturally then the next two that I need are the range end and the close time. And these are the same: input range end hours and input range end minutes and close hours and close minutes. And I'm defaulting all of these to 0 to begin. So you will need to make a change in the inputs when you run this Expert Advisor, otherwise it simply won't run. Now if I scroll down here, I had some global values for the take profit, stop loss and trailing stop, which I've already said that I'm not using, but I do have other global values. So let me just replace this. I have a Boolean value inside range, and I'm going to set that when the current time moves inside the start and end times. And I also have an inside close, and I'll set that when the current time is between the end and the close time. And I'm using those Booleans so that I can know that I have moved inside those ranges, and then as soon as I exit that range, I'll know that I've just had an exit. So I either have to set up the trades if I've just passed the end of the range, or I have to close all the trades if I've just passed the close. I also have these 3 values: range start minutes, end minutes, and close minutes. I convert these inputs in hours and minutes to just minutes because I find that's the easiest way to compare time of day. And you'll see me do that later in the code. But for now, these are just the values that I'm going to be using to store the converted hour and minute values. So now I will make further changes to the MQH, but it will make more sense after I've made the changes in the MQ5 and the MQ4 files. So I'll go now to the MQ5 file. I already have this include statement trade/trade.mqh, and that brings in the classes that I want to help with trading. And for the earlier version of this, I had an object of type cTrade called trade and one of cPositionInfo that I called position. For this Expert Advisor, because I'm going to be closing pending orders as well, I'm going to add a cOrderInfo. And because I have removed the technical indicators, I no longer need these handles and buffers. For the on init, I also no longer have this take profit, stop loss or trailing stop, so I can remove those. I don't need to set up these handles, and I don't need to check that the setting of the handles was successful. And I don't need to worry about this setting of a new bar. There is one thing that I need to add though. Because I have those inputs of hours and minutes, I just want to run a check on those inputs to make sure that the user hasn't entered an invalid number. And to do that, I'm creating this function called checkInput, and I'm creating that function in the MQH file because that will also be common between MetaTrader 4 and 5. So if not checkInput, which will validate those inputs, then I simply return init parameters incorrect. So now I'll go back to the MQH file and create this checkInput function. I'll add a few extra lines of space here to make it easier to see. And I'm just going to copy the function in here and then explain it. So this is a checkInput function. It's a Boolean. I'm simply testing all of the values for valid ranges. So if start hours is less than 0, or start hours is greater than 23, or start minutes is less than 0, or start minutes is greater than 59. And then I repeat that 0 to 23 for the range end hours and 0 to 59 for the minutes, and the same for the close hours and minutes. So if any of those conditions fail, then I simply return false. If I get to this point, then this is where I set up those global variables, these range start minutes, end minutes, and close minutes. And that is simply hours multiplied by 60 plus minutes for each of the range start minutes, range end minutes, and close minutes. And I convert these times to minutes because it's very easy then to do a comparison that one is greater than the other. And now I have a further validation here. If range start minutes is equal to range end minutes, so you may have simply not entered anything and the defaults are still at 0, or you may have set them the same, then I return false because you can't have a range that starts and ends at the same time. And also if range end minutes equals close minutes, then you'd be closing all the trades as soon as they're opened, so I just return false there as well. So you need to have a gap between the start and the end, and a gap between the end and the close. But this expert does allow you to span midnight, and you'll see that later in the code. So it is possible to have a start, for example, at 23:00 and an end at 02:00, and it will work with that. And it's also possible for the close time to span midnight after the end time. So now that I've done the on init function here in the MetaTrader 5 version, I'll make the same changes up to this point in the MetaTrader 4 version. So in MetaTrader 4, it's quite simple. I still don't need this take profit, stop loss and trailing stop, so I can remove those. I can also remove that new bar check, and then I just need to insert the check input function. So if not check input, return init parameters incorrect. Now I'm going to add two more statements to both the MQ4 and the MQ5. So remember that if we go back to the MQH here, I have this inside range and inside close. I just want to do a one-off setup to determine if the current time is inside the range or inside the close time. So an MQ5 first, and I'll put it after I've set the magic number. It doesn't really matter if I do it before or after. Inside range equals is inside time the current time, range start minutes, range end minutes. So this must happen after the check input because that's where I've actually calculated the range start and end minutes and the close minutes. And inside close is inside time, current time, range end minutes, close minutes. The is inside time function, and we'll write that in just a moment, simply looks at whatever time is supplied here, compares that to a from and a to time, and it will return true if this time is greater than or equal to the start time and less than the end time. So I consider that the end time is actually the beginning of outside the range. I'll put that same code into MQ4 and then we'll write that function in the MQH file. I'll just insert it here. So is inside time. If a supplied date and time reduced to time of day, or in my case, it reduced to minutes, is between the specified start and the end times. And it can cope with times that span midnight, but this is also going to span a weekend. So this is an important thing to remember. It may or may not affect you, but it's good to know. If your start time is say 23:30 on Friday and the end time is 0:30, then all times during the weekend when the market is closed will be considered to be inside that range. And that's simply because when the market's closed, the expert's not running, so it never checks to see if the current time is outside the range. So at say 10:20 on Saturday, the market is closed, but the expert's not running because nothing's happening. It won't detect that it has exited the range. So a range actually spans trading times. So here's the is inside time function. It returns a Boolean, takes a date time, which I'm calling now, an int, which is the start minutes, and an int, which is the end minutes. So I expect that you've already converted the start time to pure minutes and the end time to pure minutes. I've got a MQL date time variable here, which is time, and that's a structure, and it's defined inside MetaTrader. And then I use time to struct from this now and convert that into time. So that actually breaks up the date time variable into the various components inside the MQL date time structure. And that lets me pull out various pieces. So now minutes is equal to time.hour multiplied by 60 plus time.min. And then I have to return based on two sets of conditions. If the start time is less than the end time, so we're not spanning midnight, then I return start minutes is less than or equal to now minutes, and now minutes is less than end minutes. Remember I said that the end time is considered to be the start of outside the range. So that's the simple case where start is less than end. But the more complex case, and I'm returning that with or, start minutes is greater than end minutes. So this is where I'm saying we've spanned midnight and therefore the start time is after the end time. As in here, start is 23 and end is 01. So start is greater than end. And now minutes is less than the end minutes. So now would be before 01, or now is greater than or equal to the start. So now is greater than 23. So if either of these two statements are true, then I'm going to be returning a true. And if they're both false, then I'll return false. So that gives me an inside time Boolean that simply says this time is between this and this. So let's now go back to the MQ5 version. The next thing we had in the original was the indicator release, but I no longer have those indicators, so I can simply delete those lines. And now to the on tick, and this will change significantly. First, I'll just add a comment to describe what's happening here. All right, so this places a buy and sell stop orders at the end time based on the price range between the start and the end. And then it closes everything at the close time. And the other exit is based on take profit or stop loss. So the stop loss for the buy trade is the same as the entry for the sell, and the take profit is just 1-to-1 ratio. Now, because I'm tracking the high and low for the range, I'm going to set up two static variables. So static double range high and range low, I'm just initializing those to 0, but they will change with the highest value that's found during the time range and the lowest value found during the time range. So I still have is trade allowed and is market open, but I'm going to make a change here. I'm going to change this is market open to is trade allowed and put some arguments in here. So now both of these functions are called is trade allowed, but the second takes a symbol and a time. That makes this the same function, or at least appear the same as the function that is in MetaTrader 4, and it just makes having common code between MetaTrader 4 and 5 a little bit easier. So I'm going to go now and change the actual function that this is calling to take these arguments. So here in the MQH file is the original is market open, and I had several overrides for this. Because I'm changing the name of it and I'm trying to make this common between MetaTrader 4 and 5, I don't want to create a function here called is trade allowed, because that's an existing internal function in MetaTrader 4. So all I'm going to do is take all of this code remove it from the MQH file, and I'm going to place it in the MQ5 file. And I've already got an is trade allowed here with no arguments, which is this simple function for MetaTrader 5 only. So I now insert the is market open, and I'm removing these overrides because I really only want the symbol and date time. I already have the function with no arguments. So I just change that to is trade allowed. There. So now I have an is trade allowed function in MetaTrader 5 that either takes no arguments or takes a symbol and time, and it will return a value the same as the same function in MetaTrader 4. So I've got compatibility between 4 and 5 with this. So going back to on tick, so that takes care of is trade allowed, simply to say, am I allowed to perform trading on this terminal and with this symbol, and is trade allowed, which basically says that the market is open for this symbol and current time. I don't have a trailing stop, so I'm going to remove that. And in its place, I'm going to test to see if I need to close all of the trades. So that means that the last time I called this onTick function, I was inside that time between the end and the close, and now I'm after the close time. So if inside close, that means that I have detected the time that I'm between the end and the close. And then not is inside time, current time, range end, close minutes. So this is the same function that I would have used to set the inside close, but now this is returning a false, so I'm no longer inside that range. And then I call this close all function and set the inside close equals false. I can also remove the is new bar because I'm not checking for new bars in this particular expert advisor. It really doesn't matter. I can also remove these buffers because I don't have technical indicators. I can remove these comparisons of the technical indicators. And so now I've checked to see if I was inside the close period and I've exited it. Now I want to check to see if I was inside the time between the start and the end and I've exited that range. I am capturing a variable here. I'm calling it a Boolean next inside range, and that is the is inside time for the current time, range start and range end. I'm capturing this as a variable because I'm using it more than once and I don't want to keep calling this function. Similar condition to the one above. If inside range is true and not next inside range, then it means I've just stepped outside that range. In that case, I'm going to open the two trades. Open trade for a buy stop and for a sell stop from the range high to the range low, and for the sell stop from range low to range high. So these are, in the terms of the function open trade, these are going to be the entry price, and that's the stop loss price. And because I'm using a 1-to-1 take profit ratio inside this function, I can actually calculate the take profit price. Once I've opened those trades, and I'm not doing anything here to deal with cases where that open fails, I'm simply assuming that that works. So I have no error handling for the open trade failing. Then I set range high to 0 and range low to 0, which means that I've now exited the range and I can start resetting those next time I go inside this range. Inside range becomes false because I know that next inside range is false, and inside close becomes true because now I've passed the end time, and I'm assuming that there is enough of a gap between that end time and the close time that I haven't simply skipped past the close. And then inside range simply equal to next inside range. But now there's one more case that I need to deal with, and that is where I am currently inside the range and I just want to update the high and the low values. So if I am currently inside a range, then I capture the ask and the bid price using symbol info double. If the range high is 0, meaning it hasn't been set, or the ask is greater than the high, then I set a new range high equal to the ask. And if the range low is 0, which also means that hasn't been set, or the bid is less than the low, then the new range low is equal to the bid. Now there are a couple of functions that I haven't shown here because I wanted to get through everything that happens in OnTick. So there's the open trade function and the close all function. I'll get to those in a moment, but the reason I wanted to get through everything in OnTick is that now with those changes, and because I'm not using any technical indicators, this OnTick function is actually common between MetaTrader 4 and 5. So I'm going to take all of this remove it from there, and I'm going to place it inside the MQH file as well. I'll just add it in here. And now because I've done that, I'm going to go back to the MQ4. I just happen to know that it is all common, so I can simply take everything in this OnTick and remove that. Now I said that I haven't looked at the open trade or the close all function. There is an existing open trade function, but it's a little different from the version that's already built into the MQ4 and MQ5 here. So I'm going to modify that. Open trade and close all are different between MQ4 and MQ5, simply because of the way MQ5 and MQ4 handle orders and positions. So let's go to the MQ5 first. I already have an open trade function here, but this just takes a type where now I'm also passing in an open and a close price. And now because I'm passing in the open and the close price, or the open and the stop loss price, I don't need these two values. And I can simply calculate the take profit here. Take profit is price plus price minus stop loss. I can remove all of these lines where I was previously calculating price, stop loss. I will leave the normalized double. They probably aren't needed, but it doesn't hurt to have those there just to make sure that these are all valid prices. I don't need these checks on stop loss and take profit. The trade.positionOpen is then replaced by trade.orderOpen. Let me just replace all of this and go through the arguments. So it's a Boolean return from trade.orderOpen. So if that's false, if not trade.orderOpen, then I'll print this error message. The arguments are the symbol, the type, which is passed into the function here, and that's going to be a buy stop or a sell stop for this expert. The order size, which is one of the inputs. Then there is a limit price. Now this is used if you're placing a limit order, and that limit order won't be placed at all until the price reaches this level, but I'm not using it, so I'm passing a 0 there. Price, which is the price where I want to place the stop order, the stop loss, and the take profit prices. Order time GTC. This order is good until cancelled. So this order will just remain there until I cancel it. Has 0 expiry time. And then let me just scroll across a little. and the trade comment. So a little bit different to placing a position or a market order. And then I just have the error message open failed for. I'm not going to bother to change that. And the other function that I need is the close all function. And I'll be writing both of these functions also in the MetaTrader 4 version because they are different. So close all, I first loop through all of the positions for I equals positions total minus 1, I greater than or equals 0. You've seen these loops before. I get the ticket using position get ticket for index I. If I'm unable to select that ticket, then I'm simply using continue to skip to the next. If the position dot symbol, now position, remember, is the object that we've created of type C position info, and it will always hold the values of the currently selected position. So if the symbol is not equal to my current chart symbol and the position dot magic is not equal to the input magic number, then continue, because it means that trade or that position is not for this expert. And if I get to this point, then I have found a position for this expert, so I'm simply calling trade.position close for that ticket, and an error message here if it fails. But then I also want to get rid of the pending orders, and that's almost the same loop, but in this case I'm looking at orders total. I'm using order get ticket to get the ticket number for that order, order select on that ticket, orders, and then as I added above the C order info type, and I've called that order, just as with position, if the symbol doesn't match or the order.magic is not matching the magic number, continue. And in this case, I use trade.order_delete for that ticket. And while I am here, another change, not necessary to make this change, but I no longer have a trailing stop, so I don't need this function, this apply trailing stop function. I'll just get rid of that. Now we'll move on to the MT4 version. Open trade, the same here. I change the arguments where I'm passing in the price and the stop loss. I replace these three with simple take profit equals price plus price minus stop loss. I can delete all of these functions. I'll still leave the normalized double just as I did with MT5. I don't need that condition on stop loss and take profit. And for MetaTrader 4, the order send function remains the same between market trades and stop orders. So order send symbol, type, order size, the entry price, slippage, stop loss, take profit, comment, and magic number. I also need the close all function, but in MetaTrader 4 there are only orders. There aren't separation between orders and positions, so I'm simply doing a single loop, orders total minus 1, I greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus, order select, continue if that fails, and then I'm checking the order symbol and the order magic number. If the order type is a buy or a sell, then this is an executed order and it's already open. Then I have to call the order close function, passing in the ticket, the number of lots, and the order close price. Now order close price, you'll see this is a function. This is actually telling me the current close price for this order, even though the order is still open. So that's a convenient way of knowing what the current price is where I can close that order. But if this is not a type buy or a sell, then it's a stop order. So if it's still pending, I have to use the order delete function, not the order close function. And here I just pass in the order ticket. And while I'm here, I will also get rid of the apply trailing stop because that's not needed. So now back to MQ5. I think that's everything. Let me just quick scan. I'll just compile that. That at least compiled. I'll jump into the MT4 editor and compile the MQ4 version, and then I'll run a quick back test to see that that's working. Got the MQ4 editor open now, and I'll just compile there, and that also compiled. So let's go into the back test on MetaTrader 5. So now I've set this up. I've got the time range breakout.ex5. I'm running this against GBP USD. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing, just to demonstrate this. For my inputs, I've said that I'm going to start the time range at 2:30 and finish at 5, and that I'm going to close everything at 17:30. I'm running this in visual mode, so let's start this and see when some trades happen. Now I just paused it. This is the first time it's attempted to place trades. I can see that I have a buy stop here, but I don't have a sell stop. And if I look at the error messages, failed the sell stop at 1.35037 invalid price. And that is because the price was actually at the bottom of the range when the range exited. And so I attempted to place a sell stop at what was effectively the market price, and that can't be done. The way to guard against that would be to either ignore the trade in that case or place a market trade if you are already at the bottom of the level, or you can add a few extra points to the price just to move that sell stop away from the current price. So that problem is being caused here because I have a price that is effectively the range low, and at the time the range closes, the price is already at that low price, so it just happens to be the lowest price. And so when I try to open that trade, I'm too close to the price that's specified. I'm going to make a one-time adjustment in the function calling this, in the onTick function, to move the price away from the range. That way it will always be far enough away that I'll always be able to execute. So here at this point, if inside range and not next inside range, I'm going to adjust the range high and the range low. So I want to know the current spread, and the spread's returned as a long using this symbol info integer for the symbol, and the argument is symbol underscore spread. And I've got here plus 50. I'm adding 50 points to that, 50 points or 5 pips. I need the size of a point then, double point, and that's with symbol info double, symbol underscore point. And then all I'm doing is saying range high plus equals point multiplied by spread. So spread tells me how many points the spread is, and then point tells me the size of a point. So I want to increase the range high by point multiplied by spread, and I want to reduce range low by point multiplied by spread. I'm using spread there from this symbol underscore spread just to deal with times where the spread may have widened, because just adding 50 points might not be enough if the spread has widened out. So I'm using spread plus that 50 points. Just go back and compile that. All right, now we'll go back to the demonstration and see that running. And now with those changes made, I was a little bit slow stopping or pausing the strategy tester, but I have a buy trade here. A little hard to see because I have the buy and the stop loss in the same place, and I have the sell trade here, and that's also in the same place as the stop loss for the buy stop. The sell has already executed because the price has moved quickly, and that's why I said I wasn't quite fast enough to catch this. There's a take profit here for the sell and a stop loss here for the sell at a 1-to-1. So that's opened up the trade on the short side. Let me just run that through until we reach the close. Now at this point, the sell has reached the take profit and that's closed out. The buy stop remains. So the strategy that I've built in here doesn't remove one when the other is executed. So I've got a profit on the short and the buy is here, and that should close when we get to the close time. And now the time's just gone past 17:30. The buy trade is gone. So that's the way this particular expert advisor works. It will place a buy stop and a sell stop around the range defined by the times that you specify. It will execute both of them with a 1-to-1 take profit stop loss, the stop loss being at the other side of the range, and any orders or trades that are still there when we reach the nominated close time will just be closed out whether they're in profit or loss. Hope this has been useful to you. If it has, then please click that like button. It does help us with the rankings on YouTube. And until next time, thank you for watching.